This is kind of what we're starting to see now.
And we've been watching the river too. The river's coming up here in Lafayette, the Vermilion River, now just over flood stage, which was expected. It is still expected to climb. And some of those heavier rainfall totals are also starting to come in as well. Meteorologist Daniel Phillips is out over in the Storm Team 3 Weather Lab tracking Barry. Let us, Daniel, what's happening right now and where do we go from here?
Yeah, so we've got all the rainfall that we were talking about yesterday. That's now starting to arrive here. And unfortunately, when it comes to the rain, all you can do is just sit, wait, and watch the water as it comes in. Heavy rainfall is going to be all across Acadiana, and that's going to stretch offshore as well. Now, the center of Barry is sitting well to the north, and it's going to continue to climb and climb northwards as we go through the rest of the day today. It's still not moving very, very fast, but because of its presence, we are still seeing those winds gusting up at times to about 50 miles an hour. It was just a little while ago we registered some 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts. That's likely going to continue through the better part of the day today. Now, the problem is that those winds are staying up, but we've had a couple hours now of some solid rain, and that's going to start saturating the ground. It makes the ground a little softer. It's harder for those roots, those tree roots, to cling on, and so those trees are going to start to go down with a little bit more ease now that we've had a little bit extended rainfall, and we've got more rainfall on the way. Going to be a tropical depression sometime this afternoon. It doesn't reach Shreveport until late afternoon, climbs out of the area. By Monday morning, it's still drawing moisture into the area, and we're going to run through one of those model looks here in just a moment. You can see what I'm talking about. This is going to continue through the rest of the day today and likely go on into early parts of tomorrow as well. So we still have a little ways to go when it comes to some of this extended weather coverage and some of this nastier weather. Here's what the satellite and radar picture looks like as a whole. Heavy showers now exist south of I-10. We had a bunch of drier air yesterday. That drier air is starting to get eroded away a little bit. It's just been wave after wave after wave of moisture, and for the most part, that air was able to fight it all back. But you know, eventually that dry air gets eroded away, the atmosphere becomes more and more saturated, and then eventually those showers can kind of take hold, and that's what we're looking at right now. Let's do a run through here of what the radar looks like. This is Acadiana right now. The heaviest rainfall is situated in a corridor from Vermilion Parish up towards Lafayette, New Iberia as well. We've seen some very heavy showers coming in off of the Vermilion River, running from north to south, and then building back behind it, just a steady stream of showers that are going to rotate in as these things leave. Even offshore, we've got a lot of rainfall down there as well. These are some of the areas where it's at its heaviest right now. You've got some deep showers coming into Intracoastal City. So if you're in the Intracoastal City area, get ready for a round of torrential downpour. Abbeville, if you look just off to your west, this is rotating around now. This is going to produce some gusty winds as well. This is not just rainfall we're talking about. It's those sweeping winds, and the trees will start to bend over and go crazy. That's going to be those 40, 50 mile an hour wind gusts are going to be associated with cells like this. Delcombe in the middle of a torrential downpour right now. You got a little ways to go. I'm afraid you've got cells that are moving northwards, but you're feeding in from some of that moisture out in Vermilion Bay, and that's pushing northwards as well into the Delcombe region. So these are going to be the areas that you are going to start to see a little bit of flooding. It will start on the street-wide flooding, but I would start paying attention to those bayous, to those riverways. They are starting to run very full. The Perry stage, the Vermilion River at the Perry stage is starting to get up, and that will be crossing over into flood stage as well a little bit later on this morning. Same with the Vermilion River running through Lafayette, and we're going to take a look at the Perry stage here in a moment, but that is still expected to crest at about 15 feet. We started talking about the potential for that yesterday. To give you an idea, that the comparisons that everyone wants to make is, well, how does that compare to 2016? The river's still going to be about 2 feet lower than it was 3 years ago. Then we saw it get up to about 17.25 feet. 15 is still right on the verge of that moderate to major flooding along the rivers. So do watch the river levels very closely today. Forecasting the river is really tough to do, and I've seen it come in under that crest mark plenty of times, but let's go ahead and treat it as if it's going to crest somewhere around 15 feet and hope for the best. You've got heavy showers out over through Brobridge, stretching up into Arnaville right now. Deep torrential downpours into portions of St. Martin, getting into St. Landry Parish as well. Heavy showers are going to exist northwards, and then if we look out over towards St. Mary Parish, they had a brief chance to try and dry out a little bit early earlier on this morning, but those rains are starting to fill back in now, and you've got heavy rainfall out over through St. Mary Parish, Jeanerette, Florence, New Iberia. Look out for this torrential downpour here. This is starting to rotate into your area, at least on the western side of the city. You're starting to see some heavier showers, and these types of rain are going to put a big time stress on some of those roadways. In fact, speaking of the roadways, Reggie, can we pull up one of those traffic cameras that we had loaded up? This is out looking along Ambassador Caffrey here. This is the intersection of Ambassador Caffrey and Roadway. Hasn't gone underwater just yet, and this is usually one of those bellwether intersections where it starts to fill up quicker. Now, what you can see, though, is that water gets whipped around because of the winds. You can see the winds are still blowing around at a pretty good rate. You got the wires swinging here. If you look out over towards the trees, you can see the trees blowing through. So we've got another day of tropical type conditions, tropical storm type conditions. Those gusts have still been sitting up at around 50 miles an hour or so here in Lafayette, and even down south it's been a little bit higher than that. Back to the graphics now and back to the forecast. Again, talking about some of the winds and the winds that are going to be moving around associated with a lot of these cells. So when you're looking at the radar, it's not just rainfall out over through Brobridge, but these heavier cells, these are going to contain some of those stronger winds. So you have gusty winds out through Brobridge, and again, the more rainfall that lands and the more rainfall you get, the more saturated the ground becomes. It becomes harder and harder for those tree roots to hold on. So just because Barry now sits out by Alexandria, northwest of us, does not mean that the impacts from Barry are over by any stretch of the imagination. Those 40, 50 mile an hour wind gusts are set to continue for quite some time. You've got the showers that are stretching down into the Gulf of Mexico as well. This is part of the concern because you've just got a lot of moisture here, and it's finally starting to rotate itself in, and you're going to want to watch bands like this that start to set up because they don't move a whole lot, and these individual cells kind of train one after the other. So these are what we're going to be watching for today. I always try and give you guys an idea of what to look for and what we're going to be looking for as we run through our forecasts. These are going to be the kind of structures and the setups that we're going to be looking for. So I think that if something like this holds, that's going to put this corridor, you're talking St. Mary or northern St. Mary Parish, Iberia Parish, Vermilion, even into Lafayette Parish. It's going to be that corridor that sees the heaviest rainfall, and that will see the flood threat today. I think we've missed the window of that 15 to 20 inch rain that we were originally talking about because the rainfall didn't start to set up until overnight last night. However, that being said, I think we're still on the hook for a 10 to 15 inch range somewhere in South Acadiana, South Louisiana, and Lafayette could be included on that. So flooding is still going to remain a concern as we go through the day. Today, we've already seen quite a bit of rainfall. We're at about 2.5 inches in Lafayette, a little over, and I think these numbers are probably going to come in a little low as well. Models sometimes will struggle, or this is estimated by Doppler radar, and sometimes it will struggle here to get an accurate reading with tropical weather, and it will kind of underestimate it a little bit. So I think you can probably say maybe closer to 3-4 inches worth of rain. Out over towards Forked Island, same thing, heavy showers down along the coast, and this is where that corridor has been too. This is going to be out over through southern and coastal portions of Iberia Parish, working its way northwards. I would watch this area really closely, especially down along the coastline, especially out through Vermilion and Iberia, where they've seen some of the heavier rains so far this morning. And a lot of this has fallen since about midnight last night. So that's been about a 6-hour period, a little bit from yesterday, but again, most of that has arrived for today. Still have some dry air to our north, and that may try and help us out once again, but you can see that it's a little less defined. That drier air is a little less defined. It's going to have less of an impact on all of this, and you've even got a ton of moisture right here that will kind of take the hit from that drier air, and that leaves all that moisture out in the Gulf of Mexico, which then wraps up towards us. So it is not as favorable looking as it was yesterday. Looks like we're going to be seeing a ton of rain and a ton of wind as well. The gusts overnight have been at about 40, 50. We're coming up to the top of the hour now. Still plenty of 40 mile an hour wind gusts, 50 down along some of those squall lines. And again, when you look at the radar today, those deeper reds where you see the heavier rain, that's not just going to be rain. That's also going to be these very, very gusty winds, 40, 50 mile an hour wind gusts throughout the course of the day, all associated with Barry, even if Barry sits well up over towards the northwest of us. Now, we are still feeling the impacts from that. Be on the lookout for those falling trees, falling debris, and then, of course, the flooding as well. We've got another day where you're just really going to want to stay put. Let's run through one of the models here. This model seems to be doing a very good job. Futurecast has picked up on it, really kind of got the center right here early this morning. It's got some of the showers. This is what we look at when we start talking where we think the model is and if it's performing well, and that's how is it initializing everything. It's got the showers that we're seeing right now. It knows where the center is, so it's got a pretty good handle on the situation. You can see that it continues to wrap these showers, maybe a little more broken by the afternoon, but still plenty of heavy rainfall all the way through the afternoon and then into the evening. We will take this overnight tonight, and then I think the kicker for tomorrow morning is we should have one more heavy round of showers. This is 3 o'clock in the morning. This is very, very heavy rainfall, and it's been a solid day now that the models have been picking up on this happening early Monday, and this could set some areas over the edge. Areas that may not have seen flooding or may have avoided some of the heavy showers, it may not occur until early Monday. So we have to keep our guard up all the way through into Monday morning and Monday afternoon. This has been an absolute marathon of a storm. It's hard to imagine that we started doing cut-ins overnight Friday. We were on during most of the day on Saturday. We've arrived at Sunday morning now, and we are still talking the impacts of Barry. The good news is I think by the time we get to Monday afternoon, the cleanup process can start. We'll see maybe a few lingering light showers after that, but things should start to improve as we go through the remainder of the week. Rain total-wise, this is what some of the models are picking up on. It has kind of moved it towards the west a little bit, that heavier round, that 10-inch or so, 10 to 15-inch. Earlier on today, that was set up over portions of southern Acadiana. Again, that was that Iberia, Vermilion, South Lafayette corridor. I don't think we're out of the woods just yet, just watching the way that the rains have set up. This is saying we may see 2.5 inches worth of rain in Lafayette, and the fact that we're already sitting at about 2.5 doesn't bode a whole lot of confidence. So let's be prepared for another very wet day today. We will keep a very close eye on the rivers. We'll keep a close eye on the roadways, and we are going to keep a really close eye on the radar as well. If I see anything else worth mentioning, obviously I'll break in. I'll send it over to news now, guys.
All right, thanks, Daniel. Right now, the winds and the rain continue to pound Acadiana, including right outside our studio.
Yeah, you can hear those strong winds and rain right now. That's why we have Abby Breitenbach. She's live outside of the studio with more. Abby.
Hey guys, good morning. Yeah, I've been standing by outside the studio just like I was yesterday, and what we're seeing this morning is kind of what I was waiting on to see yesterday. You know, we're seeing some wind, but mostly we're seeing some rain. I showed you all day yesterday what the trees were looking like, so you can kind of see an indicator of the wind, and you can see that tree behind me. The leaves are blowing just a bit. I know it's kind of tough to see the rain, but we are seeing some sideways rain as well. Pretty much the most consistent thing out here, although there have been wind gusts, is that rain though. We're just seeing consistently heavy rain. You can hear that loud pitter patter. It's coming down and starting to make some good puddles out here. So we'll start to see more of that, I'm sure. As the sun comes up, you'll be able to see really more what the rain looks like. I mean, also though, this is something that we're used to seeing here in Louisiana, right? This is kind of a common thing in the summer, is a heavy rain downpour, but just because it doesn't look super threatening, the governor warns that doesn't mean any of us should be letting our guards down.
This storm still has a long way to go before it leaves the state. It continues to move too slowly, and some people may think that the threat is over. Some people may be tempted to think that because it was a Category 1 when it came ashore and has already been downgraded to a tropical storm, that it does not present a threat. That is not the case.
So this is pretty much what we've been seeing all morning long since I've been up around 1 or 2 o'clock. We've been seeing this sideways rain, pretty heavy. We'll keep you updated on current conditions here in Lafayette, but next I think we're going to send it over to Sarah Hollenbeck. I'm pretty sure she's in Iberia Parish. Sarah?
All right, we're going to get to Sarah in just a little bit, but right now nearly 80,000 people are without power. According to Slimco, more than 18,000 of their customers are without power this morning. Now more than 48,000 Cleco customers have no electricity, and 22,000 of them are in New Iberia. More than 14,000 Entergy customers have no electricity.
And we're going to go to Sarah Hollenbeck. She's in Iberia Parish, and she has more on the conditions. Sarah.
A total of 30,000 people in Iberia Parish are now without power, including a major hospital out here. Let me step out and show you what we're looking at. This is the main Iberia Medical Center, and they have lost power. Right now, they are in the process of relocating patients in this facility. We've been watching as ambulances parked outside of the emergency entrance stand by. We have a lot of medical crews out here. We're told that the hospital lost power and was forced to relocate patients to several different hospitals in Acadiana shortly after losing power. Now, we're not sure what caused that outage, but I can tell you in our drive here, we saw several downed trees, several down power lines, lots of water covering the roads. And because there are those power outages, a lot of areas are still dark today. Luckily, we're getting a little bit of daylight, which will make conditions a little easier for people hoping to get back on the roads as those curfews are lifted. But take a look right now at this hospital. We're watching as an ambulance is about to pull out that could have patients in it as they are working to relocate a lot of people at this hospital. Now, we're not sure if they have a backup grid here, as a lot of hospitals do, to keep patients safe, but those are questions we will be asking later this morning as people still continue to recover from Hurricane Barry. Back to you guys in the studio.
All right, thanks. That's Sarah Hollenbeck reporting from New Iberia. Now we have an update about curfews in Acadiana. St. Landry Parish has lifted its curfew. All other curfews remain in effect.
And I know that the governor actually spoke about how storm surge is one of the big concerns that we have right now dealing with this weather. And the Vermilion we mentioned earlier is at the flood level right now.
Yeah, it's not just the rain that's coming in, but that persistent south wind is also blowing the water right back up the river. So we're going to check in with meteorologist Daniel Phillips now over the Storm Team 3 Weather Lab. He's got the latest on the Vermilion and other rivers and bayous across Acadiana. Daniel?
Yeah, Dave, thanks. Wanted to go through some of the rivers. Actually have the graph up from the Vermilion River. That's still expected to crest at right around 15 feet or so, and that crest is expected to arrive a little bit later on today to kind of give you an idea of what we'd be looking at a 15-foot crest that takes it almost up to major flooding. Now in 2016, and that seems to be the one that everyone tries to make their comparisons to, then it crested up at over 17 and a half feet. Again, that was back in 2016. So we're not quite there just yet. I think a more historic crest, those of you who remember, in 1993, the river at this stage hit a little over 15 feet. And even then, it was a little bit closer to the 16-foot range. So that was back in 1993. Now, that does take it up to a moderate flood stage, and you will have to watch the rivers closely, not only from the rainfall, but also we've had some southerly winds that have really been blowing in for quite a while. So to give you an idea of what the Vermilion is a little bit further south, this is going to be the Vermilion River over at Perry. And I don't have that graph quite put together, but at Perry, that's expected to be cresting just under about 10 feet or so. It's going up, and the last observation was at about 9.5, a little over 9.5. Southerly winds also making it hard for some of that surge to clear as well. Sippermore Point surge hit just over 9 feet. It is now still sitting just over 5.5. So it has come down. It peaked yesterday evening at about 6 o'clock. So over the last 12 hours, it's been able to come down about 4 feet or so. But it is going to be kind of slow to clear. And it's not been a straight line down either. There's been little bumps up along the way. So we still have flooding down along the coastline. We do need to pay really close attention to the river levels today. Again, the Vermilion River is expected to crest at 15 feet sometime today as we continue to see more and more rainfall. Also more rain getting pushed up into the Vermilion River, coming in with those winds that are going to be from the south all day long. Today, rain and wind are going to be the big issue. We are not out of the way for a flooding threat just yet. We'll see maybe if it can shift a little further further to the west, like the RPM is kind of hinting at. And I think today we do need to be on the lookout for 10 to 15 inch rainfall as we make our way through today and then early tomorrow morning as well. Don't get caught off guard early Monday morning. We got another round of rainfall coming. Unfortunately, we've got another day with some really nasty weather and likely some pretty hefty weather updates all the way through the rest of the day, guys.
And we are seeing some downed trees and power lines across Acadiana from today's storm. Chris Welty joins us live from the north side of Lafayette, where a tree fell on a home. Chris.
Hey guys, we're live on Frank Street in North Lafayette off of East Simcoe Street. And take a look at this. You can see where this massive tree split and then fell right onto this house here on Frank Street. Now, no word on if anyone was actually inside. We haven't been able to make any contact with anyone inside, but we did notice that in the back half of the property, there's 2 vehicles. It doesn't appear that this big tree fell on any of them, but as we get daylight across Acadiana, people are going to start going out, surveying the damage from overnight, and you'll be able to see exactly what happened. A lot of down power lines across Acadiana, a lot of down trees, and if you do have something like this, it's important to report it to emergency officials so that they can get the area secure and clear any of those power lines as well. The Lafayette Fire Department even putting up their fire line, do not cross here on Frank Street, just to keep everyone safe. Guys, back to you.
Thanks, Chris. As he mentioned, there's a lot of down power lines and trees. We spoke with authorities across St. Mary Parish earlier this morning. They say the biggest challenge for the parish is dealing with those downed trees and power lines. Shelters remain open in the parish and residents are taking full advantage of them.
For me, it was a danger zone. I'm surrounded by a lot of trees, and I was just informed that a tree fell on the back part of my trailer, which, you know, it didn't do any damage as of now that I can, you know, recall, but it was just one of the reasons for getting out of a trailer and taking heed to what the authority says.
And caught on video, this dramatic rescue in Terrebonne Parish. You could see a Coast Guard crew pulling folks out of a flooded house and lifting him into a helicopter. That man was one of 12 people the Coast Guard rescued in Terrebonne Parish yesterday. The Coast Guard also saved 2 pets. And a number of roads remain closed in Acadiana. Here are the new road closures from overnight in Lafayette. Lafayette Parish, LA 182 at Fall Road near Karen Crow is closed because of a downed tree. Lake Martin Road at the Lafayette St. Martin Parish line is also closed because of a fallen tree. A number of traffic lights in the parish are malfunctioning. Remember, a flashing light is treated as a caution light, but a light that is out should be treated as a 4-way stop. Downed trees are causing problems elsewhere in St. Martin Parish. The Catahoula Highway just east of St. Martinville is closed because of a downed tree. And over in Iberia Parish, a tree is blocking the 7500 block of the Jefferson Island Road. All roads of the Port of Iberia are closed because of flooding. Meanwhile, high water in Vermilion Parish has closed some roads. LA 333 is closed from Redfish Road to the Bayou Shem Bridge south of Esther. LA 330 is closed between Highway 689 and 685 and east of LA 331.
For a full list of road closures, including roads that have been closed since early yesterday, go to KATC.com.
And be careful on those roads. The roadways are wet. Don't drive too fast. You can have hydroplaning, and it's starting to get a little more daylight outside right now. But earlier this morning coming in with the wind and the rain, and then there's also debris on the road. You got to watch out because there are some large tree branches that are on the road. And of course, when you come to a traffic light that is not functioning, if it's out, you need to treat it as a 4-way stop.
And as we've been talking about, turn around, don't drown. That's
right.
Something that Governor Edwards has spoke about as well, to make sure if you see floodwaters, don't try to go through it.
Absolutely. And talking about those heavy rains and the possibility of additional flooding, let's go over to the Storm Team 3 Weather Lab. Here's meteorologist Daniel Phillips.
Yeah, let's run through the radar here and talk about where we are seeing a lot of those showers, because now we talked about it all day yesterday, that heavy rain threat was going to be the big issue, and we were just kind of waiting on it to arrive, and you can see it is here now. You got a lot of rainfall out there. Now, if we bounce around some of the traffic cameras, some of the problem areas that we usually go to, the bellwether intersections, to kind of give us an idea of what's going on out there, those still seem to be fine. Now, they're very wet, and the winds are still blowing around, so I wouldn't recommend, this is not your open invitation to go outside and hit the roadways. I would just kind of stay put as we go through the day today, but it does mean that the ground's certainly taking some of the rain from overnight last night fairly well. The question now will be, as all this starts to drain into the rivers, how high do the rivers get? And the threat for street flooding is certainly not over. So back to the radar, these are some of the places where you have been seeing some of the heavier amounts and some of the heavier showers. You've got a line of really heavy activity that's coming in offshore, and it's tapping into some of this Gulf moisture. It's been raining in these areas for quite a while. This seems to be one of the favorable spots for that storm development here, and has been so overnight last night. Continues to be the spot that looks like is catching a lot of the rain, and it's tapping into a lot of this moisture that sits offshore. You can see that line of showers stretches basically from Lafayette all the way through down into the Gulf of Mexico. There's a big complex right here that it looks like it's trying to use up actually some of that moisture. So not a steady stream, but if it wants to, and if it can connect itself, then it kind of has an unlimited supply, and it doesn't seem to be in any kind of hurry to move in either direction. We want accesses like that, and we want lines like that moving east to west instead of sitting still with each cell kind of pushing its way further and further northwards. And it looks like that's kind of what we're seeing here and have seen for a little while now. So again, flooding remains one of the bigger issues as we go through the day today. Now, it is not just the southern parts of Acadiana that are dealing with some of the rainfall either. You do have some heavy showers down over through Ville Platte, Opelousas as well, and not just showers. When you start getting around some of these regions, you're going to see those winds picking up. The gusty winds have stayed around, and we've seen wind gusts that have gone about 40, 50 miles an hour all the way through the night tonight, and it looks like that's likely going to continue all the way back through midnight. That's kind of the gusts we've averaged, at least 1 or 2 an hour all across Acadiana. So add on top of that now some softer ground that I do think trees are going to be one of the big issues for today as long as these winds keep blowing around, and it's still able to tap into the strength from Tropical Storm Barry. The center is sitting right over here just to the west of Natchitoches. So you still have that deep pull of moisture, and you still have the capability for those tropical winds. In fact, at the top of the hour, Abbeville is able to pick up a 52-mile-an-hour wind gust. Sippermore Point sitting at about 50 miles an hour or so. The big question now is, where are those rain totals going to be setting up, and who's going to see the heaviest amount? I think that someone could still see 10 to 15 inches of rainfall today. I think that 15 to 20, the 25 hotspot that we've been talking about, I think that is off the table because we didn't get those showers to pick up until today. If we would have had this going on yesterday, I think that would have been a different story. But we're still talking the possibility for street flooding. We're still talking a tremendous amount of stress out on some of those roadways as well. To give you an idea of what we've been seeing, these are some of the rain totals that we've had so far. This goes back 24 hours. A lot of this has been going on since about midnight. You're close to 3 inches worth of rainfall just south of Lafayette. Look at the coastline, though. That line that I was talking about, that line that's running right here from Vermilion Bay all the way through up, you do have some areas that are close to 6, maybe even 7 inches in some of those spots as well. And then right offshore, we've been very lucky that this has been kind of the dumping ground, because this is your 10-inch rainfall over the last 24 hours. And lucky for us, that was sitting just off in the Gulf of Mexico and not just right on top of us. The model is handling it pretty well, and this will kind of give you an idea of how things are going to be looking as we go through the day today. We can go through the afternoon, still seeing those showers training across in very similar areas, and it looks like it's going to last through the majority of the afternoon, all the way through the evening into early parts of tomorrow morning. This is going to be the problem area, I think, because not only is the rainfall going to be heavy on Monday, but we're all kind of, even at this stage, we're all kind of over it. We've been talking about Barry for a long time. We've been talking about the flooding for a long time. And then early Monday morning, people want to get back to work. They want to get back to normal, back on routine. And I think you've got one more round of really intense rainfall. Don't get caught off guard by it on Monday. That will swing through during commute time as well. So be prepared for some flooded streets. Even if we don't see that today, even if we get rain, but the streets seem to hold, another deluge like that could kind of put it over the edge, and Monday morning might be the time frame when that does happen. Again, someone is probably going to pick up about 10 inches worth of rainfall, hot spots up to about 15. Earlier on this morning, it looked like it was going to be this area right here from about Lafayette through Vermilion over into North St. Mary Parish as well as Iberia Parish. It looks like that may have tried to shift to the west a little bit, this area. However, I will say it looks like the RPM is already missing on some of those numbers. Lafayette's number, for example, is already higher. Abbeville's number is already higher, and the numbers are already higher here just south of New Iberia, so something to keep in mind. These models come in with a little more regularity than the Euro does, so as those models come in, we'll be keeping you updated on that, keeping a close eye on the radar. Guys?
Hey, Daniel, when we're talking about the way this has evolved and how long this is going to be going on, there may be some folks that, after this made landfall yesterday and continued to move in, we really need to tell them about that this is not going to be ending today.
Yeah, and that's the problem with it, right? So we have this tendency where we talk about Barry and there's this big buildup, and then there is this huge emphasis placed on landfall. When is landfall? When is landfall? And where is it going to be? And for good reason. Traditionally, that is the worst spot. And so leading up to it, that's where you want to know where it's going to go. But then we have this thing, and it's human nature, really. Landfall's over. Barry sits up over just west of Natchitoches. Problem solved. We'll all be back to normal by Monday. And that's just not the case. So we had all the wind that came through yesterday. Today we get a round of wind and rain. Then Monday rolls around. We still have rain, and it gets to fatigue. And especially if you've been sitting around since Friday, looking at your backyard and thinking no rainfall, no rainfall, no rain, no flooding problems, and then all of a sudden you wake up Monday and you think, well, it hasn't happened yet. It's not going to happen. That's human nature. I'm guilty of it myself. I was talking to you today, oh, we'll be fine, and then you kind of look at the radar a little bit and your tune changes a little bit. But yeah, it's human nature, but it's something that you just got to kind of stick with. And we talked about burnout yesterday, and it kind of goes back to that burnout. You got to stay on top of it. You can't go all in on one particular day and then kind of ride it out the rest. It's also why when we talk about stocking up with supplies, you want 3 days worth or so. Even and a lot of people are out of power, but those of you who don't have power, how are your hurricane snacks looking now? How's that pantry doing after day one? So
I'll tell you though, one other thing, what about any kind of severe weather? We were seeing that over to the east, over in Mississippi, they were having some tornado warnings. And a lot of times when folks associate severe weather, they associate with a lot of thunder and a lot of lightning. It's got to be a really loud system. But tropical systems don't normally produce a lot of lightning.
Right. If it wasn't for the wind howling around, they'd be pretty sneaky. You wouldn't really know that it was going on outside. So just because there's not a lot of lightning, just because there's not a lot of thunder, doesn't mean that these are not strong storms. I mean, these are monstrous. They're the biggest storms the Gulf Coast can produce, But the thing, though, to watch is things start to spin around, and you can kind of see it when you
see it on the traffic cams.
Yeah, you can see how the winds kind of whip up and they spin. Now, if you get a push that's big enough, you can get a quick spin-up tornado. The problem with those is they're really close to the ground. The radar can't see it. The radar already has a hard enough time shooting through tropical storms because the rain is so heavy. It's like trying to see through a wall. And so the radar can't always pick up on it, and then that means that we can't always see it. You can't always see it at home either if it's covered in rain. And so when the winds start howling, it's best to you want to go outside and you want to watch and look outside. And I would just try and avoid winds or windows, especially when you hear those winds pick up. And I was getting asked by Ian, our producer in the back, how long those winds are expected to last. Those 40, 50 mile an hour wind gusts they're going to be with us through the rest of the day today. As long as Barry is sitting there, that's going to be possible. Now you can kind of find those at home by looking at the radar where you're seeing the reds and some of the heavier squall lines. You can just assume that those are going to come with some really, really gusty winds. And if you're paying attention, you can usually hear it coming down the street. You can hear it the way those things work. They're moving at about 60 miles an hour, and you can hear the wind coming down the street. It gets to your house, and then you can hear it leaving. So it's one of those things that if you can just kind of pay attention to the weather outside and observe and be observational and take in your surroundings, you get a pretty good idea of what's going on.
And Daniel, you mentioned how we are going to continue seeing this possibly tomorrow. It's important for people to not let their guards down.
Yeah, that's one of the really big things that we're going to harp on basically through the rest of the day, is that it's not over just yet. Yes, we've had landfall. Yes, the center is now north of us, but really and truly the impacts for central Acadiana, they're just beginning. St. Mary caught it really bad yesterday, and but the rest of Acadiana, there's some downed trees, and I don't want to minimize any of that kind of damage because that's still serious damage. But the widespread flooding, and I got a lot of text yesterday. Where is it? When's it going to happen? We've been waiting all day for this thing. So our impacts for a lot of folks, they're just kind of getting started today. So this is a multi-day thing, and we started talking about that yesterday too, and even going back to Friday and late Thursday, this wasn't going to breeze through. You gotta stay vigilant. You gotta stay in there, and hopefully you saved some of those hurricane snacks for today.
Yeah, and again, people can be updated with the weather app and tune in to KATC also on Facebook and on Twitter just to get more updates on what's going on.
Yeah, we'll have coverage through the day. It's one of the rare times Rob and I overlap basically morning after morning, and I'll be here when he comes in, and I'll brief him in and then go home for the day, and I'll come back and he'll brief me, and it's one of those things where we're staffed for it, we're prepared for it. Eric will be in a little bit later on today as well, helping out. So you have full team coverage. Everyone is in the newsroom today. We're watching it. We're keeping an eye on it, and that goes to help us out. If you start to see damage, down trees, sheds that have blown over, stuff like that, especially flooding as this rain continues, send those reports in if you can do it safely. Don't jump in a car and drive around trying to be our storm spotter reporter, our Jim Cantori, because that won't work. But if you look outside and you notice that the water's starting to come up, or if you're going to check on a neighbor and you notice the water's starting to come up, let us know and send those pictures in and those videos, those comments as well. That really helps try and drive our coverage. Otherwise, it's just based off what we see on the radar, and right now it looks like a lot of rain.
Yeah, we're going to be watching that river too and everything else in the roadways. Thanks for keeping us updated. We'll check back with you in just a little bit. Now, nearly 80,000 people are without power, and according to Slemco, more than 18,000 of their customers are dark this morning. Now, more than 48,000 CLECO customers have no electricity this morning. 22,000 of those are in New Iberia alone, and more than 14,000 Entergy customers have no electricity. That's right. One of the things we wanted to bring to you, I know we've seen a lot of complaints about I haven't had power since 9:30 last night, or where are the crews? Why can't they get the power going on? When the weather is like this and you've got these winds gusting up to 40 miles per hour, it's not safe for crewmen to be out there working on the lines. So it's going to take some time. They're going to have to wait for a lot of the rain because water and electricity, they don't mix.
Yeah.
So you don't want to mess with that. So it's got to be safe for the crews to get out there to be able to repair and energize those lines once again. So you're just going to have to kind of hang in there. There may be some cases where it might be a day or two. And I mean, if you've lived here in South Louisiana long enough and you've been through hurricanes, there are in some cases where it can take a week or more to get your power. I don't want to bum you out, but those crews they got to get out there and they got to wait until the weather improves before they can start working on those lines.
Yeah, we've got to put their safety first.
Absolutely.
As well. Yeah, and we have an update about curfews in Acadiana. St. Landry Parish has lifted its curfew. All other curfews remain in effect.
Are we going to be going to Vermilion Parish now? Okay, we're going to go to the New Orleans. We're going to check in with what's going on right now. You can see a video there of the Mississippi River. That looks like that. Is that from Algiers Point looking across the river there? Yeah, you can see how high the water is there. They were very concerned with the Mississippi River being over flood stage over the last, well, not just several weeks, but several months. And this is one of the first times that we've been dealing with a tropical system coming inland in Louisiana with the Mississippi River above flood stage. As far as those waters there, and it's not just New Orleans, Kendria, Baton Rouge, and then all points in between have seen the Mississippi River above flood stage. I mean, we can go all the way back to January was the last time the river in Baton Rouge was below flood stage, and that actually is a record, the length of time there. So you have to go back to the floods of 1927 to really see those kind of numbers lasting for such a long time. Fortunately, we do have the levee protection system, and it does seem to be holding right now.
Yeah, New Orleans actually had some flooding earlier this week, so that's something that they're also dealing with right now. And
it's one of those things with New Orleans, when you get those heavy rains like that. I think they were talking 8 inches of rain in 3 hours, and what was that, on Wednesday?
Yeah.
And, because New Orleans is below sea level, because Lake Pontchartrain is actually higher than the city, the Mississippi River is higher than the city. It doesn't just drain, it has to be pumped out. Yeah. So that does take some time.
All right, and we actually have Chris Welty. He's still in Lafayette Parish. Okay, well, we're actually going to move forward with that one.
He was doing some great coverage yesterday, going out over to our east. He was over in Baton Rouge and over toward Livingston Parish, where there was quite a bit of flooding. So when you talk about hurricane, what's now Tropical Storm Barry, it's pretty widespread.
Yeah, and you had mentioned his coverage from yesterday, and I remember one thing that was that people were walking and just kind of having a good time, just enjoying the weather before all of this hit.
But things go downhill pretty quick. We've got Chris right now, and you can see we've got some damage right here in Lafayette. Hey, Chris.
All right, I'm good.
Okay, it looks like that might have frozen there. We had the shot for a second, but then it's frozen. So as soon as we got Chris back, we're going to check back in with him. But we've seen some tree damage on the north side of Lafayette, in addition to other areas across Acadiana. So as when Chris Welty is back on with our live shot, we'll be able to check in with him a little bit later on this morning. Where do we want to go to next, Ian? Okay, so our new Iberia shot just went down too. This is what happens when you have this kind of coverage, especially when the weather is bad. Occasionally these will freeze up. So meteorologist Daniel Phillips says he's ready back over here in the Storm Team 3 Weather Lab. We could talk a little bit more about the river stages and the upcoming rainfall that's expected to roll in.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit about, we were talking about some of the rivers down over towards New Orleans. We were just looking at that live shot there. An update there. There was that scare earlier this week when we were still trying to figure out where this was going to go, and there was the scare that it may top the levee, but it looks like the Mississippi River at New Orleans will probably come up to about 17 feet. So that's going to be about 3 feet below the levee. It is still very, very high, though. So keeping an eye on the Mississippi, both at New Orleans and Baton Rouge. Baton Rouge, it remains under a major flood stage, but it has been under a major flood stage now for quite some time. Back closer to home, we do have the Vermilion River that we do need to keep a pretty close eye on right now, because that is expected to get up to about 15 feet or so. It's come up a lot. Now remember, it drained yesterday morning. We were talking about that it was one of the top 10 lowest levels it had ever been. And then starting after those winds started to change and come in from the south, it kind of shot right back up there and has been rising all the way through. So you've seen a pretty big difference in the river from yesterday morning until today. If you live along the river, and you would notice these things. So it is actually above flood stage right now. It hit the minor flood stage. It will likely hit moderate flood stage sometime maybe mid-morning, getting closer to lunchtime, and then 15 feet is expected to be the crest. So do keep an eye on that to give some kind of perspective, those who are trying to figure out what does 15 feet mean, how does that compare. 15 feet is about almost 3 feet shy of 2016. 2016 we got up to 1762, so it was a little over 17 and a half. This is more along the lines of 1993. It was up to 15 feet. in a January flood there. Those who may have lived along the river long enough would have seen that. 2001, it was right around 15 feet as well. So there's a little bit of history there for the river getting up to that stage. It's done that several times, twice actually in 1993, one in 1980, and then on over through 2001 as well would have been the latest time it did get to 15 feet, other than 2016 when it was a little bit higher. This is the Perry gauge. This is in Vermilion Parish, so this is down river a little bit. Why we need to watch this is because the winds are coming in from the south, and they are really, really strong. So that's going to push some of that water upriver. So the fact that the Perry gauge is starting to jump, and this doesn't have a forecast, this just tells you the latest observation, which is now coming up to moderate flood, which is at about a little over 9.7 feet at Perry. That's, again, out over in Vermilion Parish. A lot of that water heading northwards as well. Now, they would have factored that into that 15-foot crest. So there's two different things going along the Vermilion right now. It's strong, steady winds coming in from the south, pushing water up, and then it's the tremendous amount of rainfall that is falling as well. And you also have that water, heavy water from the Vermilion flowing into the Vermilion watershed, which is then going to get pushed up with those southerly winds. So that's why it looks like the river is going to come up, and why the river has actually been coming up pretty fast. So that will be a thing to watch. If you live along the Vermilion, I would pay really, really close attention to it here over the next 24 hours as we deal with a lot of this rainfall. Guys?
And again, we're seeing a lot of downed trees and power lines. We have Sarah Hollenbeck in New Iberia. She joins us live where a hospital there is seeing some power outages.
Good morning. Well, the big concern out here right now are power outages. Just a little bit of rain, but the power is the main thing that is impacting people, including right here at this medical center. This is the Iberia Medical Center, and we're told it has lost power alongside about 30,000 people here in Iberia Parish. Ambulances have been parked outside of the emergency entrance, and we've been watching as some of those ambulances have been taking some patients away. Now, the hospital had to relocate a bunch of those patients to other hospitals in Acadiana shortly after losing power. Now, we're not sure what caused this power outage, but we can tell you that there have been a lot of trees that have fallen down onto power lines. Just in our drive here, we saw that all over the place, as well as some minor flooding issues. So it's going to be a real challenge for anybody trying to leave their house this morning. Now, we have reached out to the hospital to try and figure out what caused this outage and whether or not they actually have a backup power grid in place, but we're still waiting for answers on that. As you can see, other ambulances making their way around this parking lot right now as they are scrambling to move all of their patients to other hospitals, especially people that rely on power for their medical care. Now, of course, they are trying to get that back up and running, but the big concern is with the winds. Those winds have to die down before they can send the power crews up to fix some of the issues. We'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
Okay, that's Sarah Hollenbeck. She's reporting live from Iberia Parish. Now we want to go to Chris Welty, who's here in Lafayette Parish. We've got some trees down, and of course that would, of course, cause some power issues as well. Let's check in with Chris right now. Good morning, Chris. What are you seeing?
Hey guys, we're here on Northern Avenue in North Lafayette off of Carmel Drive, and take a look at this. Is what we've been talking about all morning. You can see this downed tree right here. It fell sort of in between the homes, but part of it did hit the corner of this house and took out this big power pole right here. You can see how it's leaning, and there's power lines draped across the street. That's why it's so dangerous to be on the roads. That's why if you don't have to, don't get on the roads right now. You can see how the power lines are still just draped right here in the middle of the street. And there's we stepped out of the news unit, and there was actually some down power lines right there. So you just really have to be careful if you do have to be out here. Let's bring in this gentleman right here. He was actually in this home where the tree fell. And what's your name?
Chandler Fields.
All right, nice to meet you. And you were inside when this tree fell down. Walk me through, what did it sound like?
So I was just chilling, right? And so I think we was rapping at the time, and then we just heard a big boom. Tree fell. Walk in the living room, they got a big hole in the wall. I'm like, dang, bro. So, I mean, that's pretty much the breakdown of it, yeah.
Yeah, so y'all do have some damage inside.
Yeah, we got a little damage in the living room. But it's not too bad, I guess, but it was it's worse outside, I guess. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and you were there with your family. How many people inside this house when the tree came down?
Just my little brother and my dad.
Okay, all right. Well, we're glad that y'all are all safe, and the power companies, as they can, they'll get out here. They'll start trying to get this power restored. Once again, you heard that power has been out here since about 3:30 this morning. Situations like this happening across Acadiana, and we're going to continue monitoring the damage and bring it to you live here on KATC as well as our website and social media. Live in Lafayette, Chris Welty, KATC TV3.
And like Chris mentioned, there's a lot of down trees and power lines, and it's important for people to be aware of that when they're driving down the road.
Yeah, and a lot of people sometimes they get the urge to start cleaning up out there too. You don't know if those power lines are still energized, so don't touch the branches because the branches are wet, and we all know that electricity goes through water just like that. So just grabbing onto a branch like that, you may not even know that it's touching a power line, and that can be very dangerous. Well, a number of roads remain closed across Acadiana. Here are some of the road closures that we have received overnight. Here in Lafayette Parish, LA 182 at Fall Road near Karen Crow is closed because of a downed tree. Lake Martin Road at the Lafayette St. Martin Parish line is also closed because of a fallen tree. A number of traffic lights in the parish are malfunctioning. Remember, a flashing light is treated as a caution light, and a light that is completely out should be treated as a four-way stop.
Downed trees are causing problems elsewhere in St. Martin Parish. The Catahoula Highway just east of St. Martinville is closed because of a downed tree. In Iberia Parish, a tree is blocking the 7500 block of the Jefferson Island Road. All roads at the Port of Iberia are closed because of flooding. Meanwhile, high water in Vermilion Parish has closed some roads. LA 333 is closed from Redfish Road to the Bayou Shan Bridge south of Esther. LA 330 is closed between Highway 689 and 685 and east of LA 331. For a full list of road closures, including roads that have been closed since early yesterday, go to KATC.com.
We're going to check in, I believe, with meteorologist Daniel Phillips one more time. We're going to go ahead and check in with how much rain is there, what's coming, and if he's got any flood issues that we're talking about. Daniel?
Yeah, thanks, guys. Coming up to the top of the hour now, and I think we're going to run this all the way through until about 7 o'clock, and then toss back to network, I believe, is going to be the plan. Now, that may change in the next 10 minutes. But so let's run through the forecast here one more time as we get up closer to 7. We are keeping a really, really close eye on the rainfall today, and the rain is going to be the biggest thing to keep an eye on. There's a couple spots out there that I'm really wanting to watch closely, and that's going to be this that's coming up along the Iberia Vermilion Parish border, streaming up into Lafayette. It's been raining like that for a little while. Encouraging to see that, maybe it's not as intense down there, but there's still some showers that are back building behind it, and there's still plenty of moisture out here for that stuff to tap into. This is what the radar looks like right now. Maybe a little movement here, actually. Maybe getting this to move this way just a tad bit. You've got the showers that run this way, and the problem usually comes in when there's no real movement north to south on that main line, but it looks like maybe that's starting to kick out a little bit. That could give us a break. Remember, the grounds can take a lot of water as long as we get a break and as long as we get a chance to try and drain and let that water kind of soak in. Let's do a tour of the radar here. We'll start with some of the northern parishes. You've got heavy rainfall up along Ville Platte, Opelousas, all the way through up into Alexandria and Rapides. Basically a wall of rain all the way through down along I-49. Heavy showers up along 190 here. Heavier showers between Eunice out over towards Krotz Springs. And where you see some of these downpours, this is where you're going to get your gusty winds as well, even around some of these showers where it's a little bit on the lighter side. Those are still going to come packed with some winds. It's going to be the mixture of winds and rain today that really kind of get us, because the ground is going to be absolutely saturated. And then on top of that, you've got winds that are gusting to about 40, 50 miles an hour at times. We're going to see those types of gusts basically through the remainder of the day today. Got some more showers getting ready to come on into Jefferson Davis Parish. That's going to be rolling through into Acadia Parish right now. And then this is the one that I don't like the look of. This whole corridor here has been producing some rainfall basically all morning long in this exact area. This does look like it might be trying to kick out this way. It's really, really hard to tell, but there's still going to be a lot of rain. You can see that there's showers down towards the south, and those are going to be moving northwards as well. So don't let your guard down just yet. I think that that's going to be one of the higher spots where we do have that rain. Of course, there's plenty of that sitting out in the Gulf of Mexico as well. There's a quick tour of the radar here. I believe that we have someone on the phone that we want to talk to. Are we ready for that, or are we going to keep doing weather? Looks like we'll...
Yeah, we're speaking with the police chief of Youngsville, Ricky Boudreau. And can you tell us a little bit about what are you seeing right now?
Hey, Chief, how you doing this morning? It's Dave Baker at KATC. Just checking to see how things are going down there in Youngsville. How are things going so far?
Well, we've received a substantial amount of rain, and some of our roadways that collect water on a regular basis are already seeing high amounts of water. The Highland Ridge subdivision that flooded in 2016, I'm in that area as we speak, and it's starting to get substantial water into the roadway and the yard.
Are those roadways closed leading in and out of that subdivision?
Right now, yes. Hill Ridge Drive is closed at this time. South La Riviere Road is closed at this time, and North La Riviere Road.
Are those some of the roads that also flooded during 2016?
Yes, sir, it is.
How about some of the other main thoroughfares? Are you asking folks to stay off the roads?
What I'm asking is, if possible, limit all travel to emergency and emergency personnel only. Really, people do not want to be out in this weather right now.
What are your officers doing right now? Are they patrolling around the city to see what's going on?
We have been, my officers assigned to certain areas of the city that they're to patrol and monitor and report any flooded roadways and anything where we're going to have the possibility of any evacuation.
And it is illegal for people to pass down those flooded roadways in Youngsville?
I couldn't hear you.
Is it illegal to run we have ordinances there in Youngsville of creating a wake when you're driving, correct?
I'm still not understanding. You're coming in muffled.
Okay, we were saying we're talking about the flooded roadways. You're encouraging people to stay off the flooded roadways because that can sometimes create a wake.
Yes, sir. Well, it's for their safety, their family safety, and for the safety of the first responders. If they are going into flooded roadways and they happen to, their car dies out, then we're having to go in there and rescue them. So if they could just stay off of the roadways that are where they see water, try to find an alternate route or call us. We'll come get you and get you to where you need to be. But we're asking that they limit travel, stay where they at.
If they have an emergency, 911 is still working down there?
Yes, sir. 911 is working, and we are manning the phones at the police department also.
Sweet. Okay. Thanks a lot. Chief Ricky Boudreau from the Youngsville Police Department. Let us know if you need anything else. You can just call into our newsroom. So thank you for joining us this morning. Take care.
All righty. Thank you.
We have a flash flood warning.
Can we go to Daniel real quick here because he does have a flash flood warning that's in effect right now.
Yeah, so no real surprise here, but we got a flash flood warning that popped up basically right as we went with the sheriff there. This is going to be for Jeanerette, Lauraville, Lydia, New Iberia. Lafayette is included in this. You may have heard your phone going off just now. And no real surprise here. This is exactly that area that I had been talking about and had kind of been concerned about as well. So they've already received several inches worth of rainfall. Looks like they're going to continue to see a lot of that rain. Just looking at the bulletin here, if I could bring that back up again, National Weather Service, they're coming in saying that, yeah, several inches, up to 2. That's probably closer to 3 to 4 inches worth of rain at this time has fallen. They've got more on the way, and there's more sitting offshore as well that they're tapping into. So again, this is going to be a flash flood warning. This is going to be in effect until 9 o'clock in the morning. So you've got 2 hours worth of this warning. You probably got 2 hours worth of rainfall at least as well. And that's going to be for Lafayette Parish. That's going to be for northwestern Iberia Parish, St. Mary, Eastern Vermilion, and northwestern St. Martin Parish. It's going to include several different cities. So it's going to be for Lafayette. It's going to include New Iberia. You're included in this. Abbeville, Catahoula, Scott, Brobridge even, Carencro, St. Martinville, Jeanerette, Intracoastal City, Sippermore Point, Avery Island, Broussard, Youngsville, Erath, Delcombe, Henderson, Maurice, Lauraville, and Butte LaRose. I know that was a long list of cities. That's a pretty populated corridor, though, when it comes to Acadiana, and most of that is all under a flash flood warning right now. Avoid the roadways. That would be Highway 90 would be one of the main thoroughfares. 167 would be one of the main thoroughfares. Almost any of the roadways in Lafayette, portions of I-10, all affected by that as well. Again, a flash flood warning in effect until 9 o'clock this morning. Guys.
Thanks, Daniel. Well, we have crews throughout Acadiana monitoring the storm. We have Jason Lamb. He's with our sister station in Nashville, but he is here in Acadiana in St. Martin Parish with more. Jason.
That's right. We're in St. Martinville, right in the heart of that flash flood warning that was just issued off Catahoula Highway. I want to give you an idea of what we're looking at here with photographer Gary Pacula. We are going to take a look at what is right in front of us here, a tree down right, or a little tree down right in front of this car. Very lucky that this car wasn't scratched up a little bit more. We're going to try and back out onto the highway here because we have been seeing all kinds of damage all throughout St. Martin Parish as we go up Catahoula Highway here. We have been seeing the ditches on either side of the road really start to flood, and this pounding rain that has just been taking through the last couple hours. A lot of the debris that you can see on the side of the road here. We were actually sent out this way to check out what was reported to be a tree that was across the road here, Catahoula Highway, and we're coming up on that site right now. You can see all the debris that was left behind from that tree, but thankfully it has been cleared. If you can see, though, down there on the road, there is a downed power line. So that is a danger for folks that we have seen all throughout here in the parish. And this is the kind of thing that officials have been warning about, these downed power lines, for everybody to be careful of. We are going to continue to survey the damage here in St. Martin Parish. We find anything else out here, we will get right back on and let you know. For now, we're live in St. Martin Parish. Jason Lamb, KATC TV3.
All right, thanks, Jason. Stay safe. We're going to go outside to the back door here at KATC. We've got KATC's Abby Breidenbach, who is standing by. She's going to let us know what's going on out there. Hey, Abby.
Hey guys, yep, I am just down the street from the KATC studios on Eras Landry, on the 500 block of Eras Landry, and as we were headed to find actually a tree that fell down, we encountered a downed power line on Eras Landry. This is here on the 500 block of Eras Landry Road. Obviously, Lafayette PD is doing a great job of keeping it blocked off, but the road is blocked off here. There is no passing. They were even hesitant to let us come over here to shoot video of the power line. You can see it's kind of low here behind me, and this isn't the only power line that's down in the city. Right now, there's also a power line down on the 500 block of St. Catherine Street, and there's another power line down on the 300 block of Main Street here in Lafayette. This is just a reminder that even though the curfews have been lifted, it still is going to be kind of tough to drive out there. Obviously, you have the flooding to worry about, but these power lines falling down are not safe to pass either. We'll keep you updated on anything else we see here out in Lafayette, but right now, back to you guys.
Okay, thanks. That's Abby Breidenbach live on Eras Landry. She's just a few blocks east of the television station there at Macon Road.
Yeah, and we actually have a crew in New Iberia with Sarah Hollenbach. She's, well,
might have a little bit of a delay there, but as we were talking about those power lines down, you don't know if those power lines are energized or not. So not safe to drive over there, not safe to be trying to clean anything up. And I know there's a lot of folks that are out there that have been in the dark. It's going to take a while for the crews to get out. They can't go out when it's unsafe with the gusty winds and the heavy rain. So they're going to get there as quickly as possible to try to get your power on. Do we have Sarah now? Okay, Sarah is live now. She's down in New Iberia near Iberia Medical Center, where we've been having some issues with electricity. Good morning, Sarah. What are you seeing this morning?
In the time that we've been here at the Iberia Medical Center, we have watched as more than a dozen patients have been taken out of this hospital. As we've been telling you, they do not have power at this time, and you can see that they are currently in the process of trying to get several of those patients out. One of the last ambulances that we just watched pull out, we watched as they loaded up a patient, took them in, and we know that they are bringing them to other hospitals in the Acadiana area that do have power. Such a big concern out here is 30,000 people currently do not have power in Iberia Parish, and this hospital is trying to make amends because they obviously have a lot of patients that rely on power for their medical care. Now, if we want to swing over here, I can show you something different that we haven't showed you before. There is a tree down right over here, and that's something that we saw a lot of on our drive over here today from Lafayette. We saw tons of trees that had collapsed, including ones with really large trunks, and that's some of the main issue here, is that these trees in the wind fell onto the power lines, and we saw several of those power lines as we were making our way over here that were just leaning in the wind because of the impacts that we saw with this storm. 60, 70 mile per hour winds last night into this morning. We're still starting to see a lot of rain out here, but the conditions aren't nearly as bad as some of what we saw last night. Let's hope that holds true. But as for this hospital here, they will continue to transfer those patients, especially the ones in critical need, as they work to restore power. Back to you guys.
All right, thanks. That's over on East Main Street there, right across the street where you saw some of those. Those are some pretty big trees that are over there. Yeah. There's some doctor's offices that are directly across the street from Iberia Medical Center. Those are some large water oaks that have come down there. We're going to go over to meteorologist Daniel Phillips here. He's got another look at what's going on with the radar and any warnings that we have out there now.
Yeah, we do have the one warning that is going to be the flash flood warning that is going to be in effect for that corridor of rainfall that I talked about. I'll show that here in just a moment. Here's a big picture look at everything that's going on right now. Ton of moisture out in the Gulf of Mexico. We are still very much feeling the effects and the impacts from Tropical Storm Barry, regardless of the fact that that low is sitting way over here now. We still have those 40, 50 mile an hour wind gusts. We're going to see that through the remainder of the day. Just looking at some of the traffic cameras outside, those winds are still blowing around. In fact, if we could pull up one of the traffic cameras, this is the intersection of Ambassador Caffrey and Roadway. This is one of those bellwether type intersections that tells us when the roads are starting to flood in Lafayette, and it is dry-ish. It's going to be slick and it's going to be wet, but there's not standing water on it like we have seen from time to time. That is not an open invitation to go out on the roadways. I would still kind of urge everyone to stay inside. It's really for the best. You can see how strong those winds are blowing around. You can tell just from the trees moving around. The wind is picking up that rainfall even, so you're getting sheets of rain that are getting driven across the roadways as well, and a ton of rainfall out there. In fact, this is what the radar looks like right now. We can throw on that warning box and you can get an idea of where the flash flood warning is. If you are just tuning in and you're curious why your phone went off, this is the reason why. You've got a flash flood warning that is going to be in effect for portions of Vermilion Parish. It is going to be in effect for parts of Lafayette Parish, St. Martin Parish even. That's going to be all the way through down into Iberia Parish, so including New Iberia, Lafayette, Delcombe. Erath is included in that. Abbeville is included in that. Brobridge, Henderson even. And so stay off of the roadways here. We've got a lot more rainfall that is on the way. We've got a lot of water out on the roadways, unfortunately, and more all across Acadiana. You can see it stretching all along I-49 from I-49 down to the I-10 corridor. You've got some heavier rain bands kind of broken up in there, and where you've got these yellow colors right here, those are going to be associated with some of the stronger winds as well. So those 40, 50 mile an hour wind gusts, which are likely going to be sticking with us through the remainder of the day today. That's why the threat of falling trees has not ended just because Barry has made landfall and is north of us. That will continue through today, another day where it's best to just stay put as best as you can. Got a nasty looking line that's getting ready to get going here. This is going to stretch from Allen straight through Jefferson Davis Parish and then on into the Gulf of Mexico. Does not look like it has a lot of east-west movement with it either, and a lot of showers out there as well. So if this keeps up as long as the other one has, we may end up seeing a flash flood warning come into effect in this area as well along some of the roadways. So pay close attention to that area over the next couple of hours. See if it's still raining there and raining in that manner. That'll be pretty telling. That will be a spot to keep an eye on for. Again, the problem corridor right now has been from the Vermilion Bay straight up through into Lafayette. The good news is, though, that hardcore round of rain, that axis of rain, does seem to have a little more easterly component to it now than it did earlier, which is good news. Don't let your guard down, though. There's still a ton of water out there, and there's still a ton of rainfall. We've already seen a lot of rain. You can see right there, right along the coastline, you're talking close to 8 inches worth of rain. In Lafayette, 3 inches worth. I got a report just a little while ago. This came in from Sanine Broussard. If I mispronounced your name, I'm really, really sorry. She said that her rain gauge today was at about 4.5 inches. She's over between Youngsville and Milton off of Highway 92, and this morning it was only at 1, so she's received about 3.5 inches worth of rainfall since yesterday at 7:30, and that's been the case with a lot of this, just because we didn't get a whole lot of rain yesterday. So most of these numbers we received today, and you've got a corridor here. This is where that axis was, and where we do have the warning right here, this area, and you're talking probably 6 to 8 inches worth of rainfall through there. That's going to put some stress out on the roadways, and that's what we're going to be keeping a pretty close eye on here over the next day or so. We do have the wind gusts that are up there as well, 40, 50 mile an hour wind gusts. That lasted all the way through the night, and it is still ongoing. At 7 o'clock, we had a gust in Lafayette at 52, which is one of the highest we have clocked in the city. Going all the way back to last night, we had a 52 mile an hour wind gust. So it's still just as strong as it was last night, if not a little stronger in some areas. Abbeville's at 50, Ville Platte's at about 31. Again, these are gusts, not necessarily sustained winds, but just running off of the radar here. We're going to have another day of this at least. We're going to continue to see these showers persist through the day in this manner. These lines of showers, they'll come and go. And as long as we get chances to break up the rainfall, we can take a lot of rain. It's just as long as it doesn't all arrive at once. 6 inches in an hour is a lot worse than 8 inches spread out over a 4-hour time period or through the day. So we want them to arrive as sporadically as possible. Remember, tomorrow morning we could be on tap for another round of heavy flood-producing rainfall for early Monday. Don't let your guard down after today. When you do talk some of the rain totals, these are what the numbers have been looking like. They've been coming in. Oh, this is new. This is a lot more bullish here in this area here. This was at a little while ago. This was probably at about 10, maybe 15. Now you got some hot spots that are coming up closer to about 20. That could stretch into Acadia Parish as well. So it does look like South Acadiana, somewhere between Cameron and Iberia is and then from the I-10 corridor down to the coast, somewhere in there you're going to see a rainfall that gets up to 10, 15, and it's probably also going to be here too, because it seems like Futurecast is kind of underestimating this corridor, which has already seen 7 to 8 inches worth of rain over the last 24 hours. So those are going to be the two spots to really watch for as that rain does start to pile up and we start getting some of those flooding concerns, of course, watching the rivers as well. I got these pictures in from LaDonna Shores earlier. This is from the Vermilion River, and you can see coming up, it is flooding. It is in flood stage right now. It is going to approach eventually 15 feet is the crest expected along the Vermilion later on today. At last check, this was 5:15, so you need to go in and get a double check here. I can actually pull that up really quickly, but at 5:15 it was sitting just over about 1203. It's at 1203 now, so it's come up over the last couple of hours. That riverway is up to 1203 on its way to 15. Is that forecast still 15, Dave? 15, yeah. So the forecast hasn't changed. It's climbing steadily. Looks like the forecast is holding true. And then there's the Perry gauge as well, which at last check, again, this was at 5:15 this morning, was sitting at about 9.7. That is downriver. You do have southerly winds that are pushing that water up river and into the Vermilion as it flows through Lafayette. Those are going to be the things to watch as well. We're not out of the woods just yet. Really heavy rainfall, really, really gusty winds. So that's what we're going to be keeping an eye on. Guys?
All right, thanks, Daniel. We'll keep an eye on the rivers. We'll keep an eye on the radars, too. And, everybody needs to stay safe. Even though Barry makes landfall yesterday, we're still going to be dealing with this, not just today, but perhaps into Monday as well.
Yeah, and it's important for everyone to monitor the roadways, make sure that you're not driving in flooded waters, or just make sure that you're not passing by any kind of downed power lines or trees.
And hopefully power will be restored as quickly as possible. The linesmen and the other crews can't go out there and do any repairs until the weather dies down with all the heavy rain and the gusty winds that are out there. You're just going to have to hang in there and stay put. Unfortunately, there are several thousand customers in Iberia and St. Mary, and then more sporadic in some of the other parishes across Acadiana. And then, of course, now that the rain is finally coming in, I know there were a lot of folks, including my family, that was getting a little cabin fever yesterday when not a whole lot was going on, and now being stuck indoors for another day with these heavy downpours. There you can see some of the power outages in Acadiana. Slimco, nearly 18,000, nearly 50,000 customers with Cleco, and I think about 28,000 of those are in New Iberia alone. Entergy, a little over 14,000, so you're talking about over 80,000 customers are without power this morning.
And we had spoke about how it might be some time before people see their power back up, because you have to make sure that the safety is good for the crews that are working to put that power back in store.
Absolutely, and any traffic lights that are out, you need to use those as a four-way stop, but what would be best is you just stay put and stay off the roadways. They can be dangerous. There could be some flooding out there, trees and power lines that are down as well. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for right now. We're going to be sending it back to regular programming, which is Good Morning Acadia, or Good Morning America rather, on ABC. Meteorologist Daniel Phillips and I will stay in the Storm Team 3 Weather Lab. If we do need to break in with any warnings, we'll do that right away. And if we need to get back to some extended coverage, we will join you at that point. So we're going to rejoin Good Morning America on ABC.